Katie Morrison sat alone in the dim communications bay, staring at screens full of static and empty space signals, when the proximity alarm suddenly started beeping loud enough to make her jump in her seat, and the first thing she thought was that nothing ever happened during night shift. So why would something happen now on the one night she was covering for Danny, who wanted to go watch some stupid sports game in the rec room? The alien ship appeared on her screen like a silver droplet hanging in the black void, and it was sending out a signal requesting permission to dock at the research station, and Katie had to wake up Commander Lisa Grant, who arrived looking annoyed in her wrinkled uniform, but became very serious when she saw the vessel. Because first contact protocols were no joke, and they had never seen this particular species before in all their years out here, mapping the frontier. The airlock opened with a hiss, and the alien who stepped through was tall enough that she had to duck her head, and her skin looked like liquid silver flowing under bright white lights. And she had these enormous violet eyes that seemed to glow from within. And Katie found herself staring like an idiot, because in all her training, nobody had mentioned that aliens could be this stunning and beautiful in a way that made her heart beat faster. The alien introduced herself as Zarathus from the Valorian people, and she spoke perfect English through some kind of translation device on her collar. And she explained that her civilization had been observing humans from a distance and wanted to open diplomatic relations because they believed humans had potential to become important allies in this region of space. And Commander Grant was nodding and saying all the right official things, but Zarathus kept glancing at Katie with this strange expression on her face. Then Zarathus suddenly froze mid-sentence, and her violet eyes went wide, and she stared directly at Katie and made this small gasping sound, and her silver skin flushed to a pale pink color around her cheeks and neck. And everyone in the room noticed the change and got quiet and uncomfortable. And Katie felt this weird warmth spreading through her mind, like someone had turned on a heater inside her skull. Zarathus asked in a shaky voice if she could speak with Katie privately. And Commander Grant frowned but agreed, and led them to a small conference room and left them alone. And the moment the door closed, Zarathus backed away from Katie looking distressed and said that she needed to confess something important about her people. Valorians were telepathic, Zarathus explained, and they could read the surface thoughts of most intelligent species they encountered, but it was usually like hearing whispers from far away or seeing blurry images through fog, and most aliens had natural mental shields that made reading them difficult even for skilled telepaths like herself. But Katie was different, somehow. When Zarathus looked at Katie, she could hear her thoughts as clearly as spoken words and see her mental images in vivid detail, and feel her emotions like they were her own feelings, and it was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once, because no human had ever broadcast so loudly and clearly to her before, and she did not know why Katie was special. Like this, Katie felt her face burning hot because she realized that meant Zarathus had heard her thinking about how beautiful the alien was and how her eyes reminded Katie of amethyst crystals. And Zarathus made that gasping sound again and turned even more pink and said yes, she had heard all of that, and Katie wanted to die of embarrassment right there on the floor. Zarathus touched her arm gently and said that Katie should not feel ashamed because her thoughts were lovely and honest and pure in a way that most beings were not. And humans seemed to feel everything so intensely and deeply that it was actually wonderful, even if it was also overwhelming, and she had never experienced anything quite like being near Katie Morrison. Over the next few days, Zarathus had to work with Katie to set up communication systems between their species, and every single time they were in the same room, Zarathus would react to something Katie was thinking, and it became almost like a game where Katie would think something and watch the alien's skin change colors in response. Katie learned that when she thought about how graceful Zarathus moved, the alien would smile, and when she thought about wanting to touch her silver skin, Zarathus would shiver, and when she imagined what it would be like to kiss her, the alien's breathing would get faster and more shallow. Danny found Katie in the cafeteria one afternoon and sat down across from her with a serious look on his face, and said that everyone on the station had noticed the weird energy between her and the alien diplomat, and he needed to warn her that getting involved with another species was complicated and potentially dangerous because there were regulations and cultural differences, and a million ways it could go wrong. Katie told Danny that she was not planning anything and could not help what she was thinking, And besides, it was not like Zarathus had shown any real interest beyond being fascinated by her noisy human brain. But even as she said it, she knew she was lying to herself, because the way Zarathus looked at her was not just scientific curiosity. That night, alarms started blaring throughout the station, and everyone rushed to the command center where Zarathus was receiving an urgent message from her homeworld, and her face looked stricken and afraid as she translated that a massive solar flare was going to hit her planet, and they needed to evacuate millions of people but did not have enough ships or time. Katie immediately started pulling up star charts and calculating routes and asking Zarathus about her people's technology and resources, and Commander Grant told her to step back because this was not their emergency, and they did not have authorization to get involved in alien disasters. But Katie argued that people were going to die if nobody helped them. Zarathus stared at Katie with those huge violet eyes, and Katie thought as loudly as she could that some things were more important than rules and regulations, and that if they had the ability to help save lives, then they had the responsibility to try. And the alien made a small sound like a sob and turned to Commander Grant and begged for assistance. Commander Grant finally agreed to help coordinate with nearby human ships and other allied species to assist in the evacuation. And Katie threw herself into the work, spending 3 straight days at her station, managing communications and routing supply vessels and helping plan evacuation schedules while drinking terrible coffee and barely sleeping. Zarathus stayed right beside her the entire time, translating messages and managing the telepathic network with her people, and coordinating rescue efforts, and Katie could feel the alien's presence in her mind like a constant warm pressure, and it was comforting even when everything else was chaos and panic. On the 3rd day, when Katie had been awake for something like 40 hours straight, her mental walls completely collapsed from exhaustion, and every thought and feeling she had was broadcasting at full volume. And as Zarathus gasped and grabbed the edge of the console to steady herself because she was experiencing everything, Katie felt all of Katie's compassion for the millions of strangers she was helping save, and her determination to do the right thing, no matter what the cost, and her bone-deep belief that every life had value, and her terror that they would not finish in time, and underneath all of that, her intense feelings for Zarathus herself and how much she cared about this beautiful alien woman. Zarathus reached out and took Katie's hand, and Katie felt the telepathic connection deepen, and suddenly she could feel what Zarathus was feeling too, and it was like diving into warm water, and the alien was feeling admiration and gratitude and affection, and something deeper that Katie did not have a name for but recognized anyway. They managed to evacuate the last transport ship just 2 hours before the solar flare hit, and the relief that washed through both of them was so intense that Katie started crying and could not stop, and Zarathus pulled her into an embrace and held her while she sobbed into that silver shoulder. The crisis was over, and thousands of Valorian lives had been saved, because Katie Morrison refused to follow regulations that said humans should not get involved, and because she had worked herself into exhaustion to help people she had never met. And Zarathus's people were calling her a hero, but Zarathus had to go home to help with relief efforts and rebuilding. And on the day she was leaving, Katie walked her to the airlock, trying not to cry again like an idiot, and the alien turned to face her and reached up to cup Katie's face in both hands. Zarathus opened her mind completely for the first time, letting Katie feel the full depth of the telepathic connection, and Katie gasped because it was like seeing colors she had never known existed, and feeling emotions that had no human words, and understanding something profound about the universe. The alien told her that in all her years as a telepath she had never encountered a mind like Katie's, and never felt emotions as pure and intense as human feelings, and never wanted to stay connected to someone forever the way she wanted to stay connected to Katie. Morrison Zarathus promised she would return as soon as she could, and said that even across the vast distance of space, she would carry Katie's thoughts with her always. And Katie said something stupid about how that meant Zarathus would never get any peace and quiet, and they both laughed even though they were crying. Months passed, and Katie went back to her normal boring night shifts, monitoring empty space and missing the warm pressure of X.